and welcome. My name is Ari, and this is the Invictus Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Eric Shields. He runs Champions Martial Arts in Puyallup, Washington, and Eric has had that location since 2006. He is an entrepreneur, he is a martial artist, and he has some great insights on basically business and the martial arts in general, and I really wanted to pick his brain. I've known Eric for a long time, and he has some really, like a good sense of what's going on in the martial arts world. He has a unique perspective as well because he is a Taekwondo black belt and also Brazilian Jiu Jitsu black belt. And so sometimes, I mean, you come in kind of from a traditional martial art and then you have the kind of more modern BJJ. So it's a good meld, and I want to kind of pick your brain about that, Eric. So welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be on and just kind of rap with you.
Love it. So before we start, I kind of mentioned before, you are in your office right now and
yes,
commenting on that. It's awesome. You got...
Yeah, this is the office. This is kind of my little hideaway, essentially. Like everything in here is stuff I grew up around, and little collectibles from Funko Pops to back here is all my comic books, and my Superman comics are here in the back corner, and just tons of stuff that I'm into, you know. So this is kind of the side they don't typically see. You see me on the mats and so forth, but again, a huge comic book fan, huge comic book junkie, huge superhero fan. You name it, tons of fun stuff.
I find it really weird in some ways because all the martial artists I know, at least a large majority of them, love geek culture and comic books, and you're the same. I'm the same. What is it?
I couldn't even tell you. I remember. So I started martial arts. I got into it based on the 1980 whatever year it was of Karate Kid, and then it went to all the superhero stuff, and everything was just in that. So I guess I mean the 80s and 90s were very big in that particular world. You know, again, if you look on TV back then, you had Superman cartoons, Batman, Spider. Oh, you had all the superheroes on TV. If you turn on TV now, you don't have all these superheroes. You have to wait for the big movie productions, and that's just not a part of society as much as it was back then. So I think, you know, all of us, our childhood was just surrounded by that. And so it's just bled over into life, I think, now.
Do you think that kind of that nerd and geek culture, I mean, as kids, we're drawn to the martial arts because this is an oversimplification of it, but you had those geeks and nerds that didn't really do sports, but then there was the martial arts, which was not sports, but it was something.
Right.
I kind of see that a lot, or kids who were kind of introverted, they ended up going to the martial arts rather than doing, you know, do you find that?
No, 100%. I think, you know, very rarely, if you were to survey, you know, say 1,000 people that have done martial arts, a very small percentage is probably going to be your high school star quarterbacks, your popular kids. The big popular kids weren't doing that because they were out hanging with their friends and doing all the other cool, you know, fun stuff. I was just a little guy. I was small, and so I always got picked on when I was little, and I always moved around because my dad was in the military, and so not really being able to latch on to new friends because we'd always move. I had to find something to do, and martial arts was kind of the constant thing. And so I think it resonates with people because it's very individualism. It's not a team sport. Whereas if you aren't as good as the rest of the team loses. You're as good as yourself, and you push yourself to what you need to be. And so I think that's what makes a lot of us, you know, thrive, is because we're not relying on somebody else or relying on someone else's skill set. It's just all about us. And so, you know, I think that's why most of us, you know, thrive in it and don't depend on the team, essentially.
Mm-hmm. And so I want to get into talking about the whole COVID crisis and what business owners are doing. But I mean, like I said at the beginning, I've known you for a long time, and you're an entrepreneur. You have several businesses. You have a clothing company. You do web design. I mean, you do a ton of stuff, and that's kind of all helps push you forward, I think, in the martial arts world. But let's start with the whole COVID thing. Obviously, all of our schools are closed. Hopefully, they'll be opening up soon. How are you navigating the COVID crisis, and what are you doing to help your students during this time?
So I would say late February, early March, it kind of started picking up. It got really bad here in Washington, and the numbers were just skyrocketing. And so I was really concerned, and there was a big tournament coming up. I believe it was the second week of March, I want to say it was, and we had a lot of students that wanted to compete. We always participate in the tournament, but with the way things were going, um, we had to make some tough decisions and not participate in that. And we got a lot of flack from that because people still wanted to participate, and we were still very supportive of everything. But I always try and put our students and our families and our instructors and staff first. Their health is always important to me, and so we ended up pulling out of that. And then a couple of days later, there was an official mandate that we had to close. Um, and immediately everybody was panicking. Everyone's thinking, hey, what are we going to do? Our schools are closed. We're not going to make any money. This is going to be the worst time of our lives. And this is when people need to innovate. And so I say about a week or two prior, we was already kind of thinking what's going to happen if we have to actually do that. What's life going to look like? And so we were already set up for online classes. And a lot of people are just they're doing online classes, but they're just making it where it's a workout. Let's do 50 jumping jacks and 30 push-ups, and we can kind of hip escape and do this and this. We're still teaching an actual class, but we've modified how we're doing it. So jiu-jitsu is very close quarters. You have to have a partner. And so we've taught everybody how to make their own jiu-jitsu dummies. And so you have a jiu-jitsu dummy. You can work on passing guards. You can work on side control. You can work on gi chokes. You can work on everything that you would in class without an actual live person. It's the same concept. And I've got a good friend in Seattle named Brian Johnson. He taught a really cool seminar with us back in January and taught this thing called a Tarzan drill. And so I kind of modified it to use it with a chair. And so now you're able to work on open guard passes, and you can work on toreandos, and you can work on different movements, and you're creating the exact same atmosphere that you would have in your classrooms. And so everyone's loving that. And so we focused on doing the virtual classes and creating an actual class throughout the entire week, Monday through Thursday. And then on top of that, we created home training kits. And so if our Monday, Wednesdays are Taekwondo day for virtual classes, the jiu-jitsu guys weren't having anything. And so we were putting out home training kits. So here's Monday, Wednesday, here's the Taekwondo class. Jiu-jitsu guys, you're going to get, this is your home training skill set. This is your warm-ups. This is your cool down. So it's like their own little class at home. And then we flip it. And then I want to say next week, we're going to be launching what's called a home training point challenge. And so people do certain different things when they're at home during this particular shutdown, and they're keeping their points. This is predominantly big with kids. Adults aren't really going to rack up points, essentially. Most of them will be kids. And then at the end of things, they just tally up their points, and then we get different prizes and so forth. And so that's kind of how we're doing it. We've got an app. We've got tons of cool stuff that is very engaging with all of our members. I think that's the one thing a lot of people don't do, is just continuously engage. This is the time to give back even more. I think we're working harder now than we did when we were open, because we're super engaged now. But when you're open, you're like, okay, cool, I'll make one post on Facebook and I'll post a little meme or a quote, and everything's great. Now you're constantly posting and commenting and having conversation and everything you should have done beforehand. And so this has worked great for us. We've got a lot of new students based on it too. Everybody's at home. We know everyone's at home. All the kids have no activities. Adults are at home. So rather than trying to push in-person classes, we're selling online virtual memberships, and it's working great. And so that's kind of what we've done to kind of combat that. A big thing that we did in the beginning too is we never said that we were closed. A lot of places are saying, hey, we're going to close, we're closing the doors, we're closing this. When you say you're closed, that word connects with people and they think, cool, no more payments, I don't have to pay, everything's canceled essentially. We never say we're closed. We're still open. Everything is the exact same. The only difference is our physical location is not available currently. We're still running classes. We're still teaching classes. We're still giving you everything that you would get if you were in a physical building. So technically we're not closed, just our building is closed. You just can't go to the building. And so that's kind of what we've done, and other people kind of follow suit with that, and they've seen a higher retention rate rather than saying, hey, we're closed. I wish you the best of luck. We'll see you when we see you. If you said that, everyone's going to say, cool, let's put our memberships on hold, and no one's going to be getting anything. This is the best time to engage and connect. Call your students just to check on them. Make posts where, hey, if anyone's hungry, if they need food, let us know. We'll be there to help you. Partner with local food banks. If you have people that are ready for belts or stripes, do online striping, do online belt tests, and then go to their house and deliver a belt. Take a pool stick or something and literally deliver their belt that way with the 6 feet rule. Deliver their stripes. So you're still creating this incredible experience, because that's what martial arts is. You're not selling a skill set, you're selling an experience.
Yeah.
If somebody walks into your building and you are the worst teacher, you're not personable, everything sucks, they're not going to come back. But if you create an experience where they're just head over heels for everything that you did, of course you're going to get them to come back, and they're going to bring their friends, they're going to refer, and that's what it's all about. And so just now is the time to create that experience that makes people go, my goodness, this is where I should have been the entire time, or I'm happy that these guys are still doing this. We've had so many messages where people have been saying that, thank you for doing this, thank you for still offering these particular classes, because it gives our kids something to do. There's a sense of normalcy. It keeps the structure going. And so that's kind of how we've hit a home run this whole time.
So, Eric, you were talking about, you have to innovate. You're talking about you have an app, you have a great website. Language is key, and what you say, being closed and not being closed. And I think that kind of hits the point home. And you were talking about relationships with your students, and I think that really is what it comes down to. You have to have a relationship with your students, and it's not just making money, because then your student base is going to see that, obviously. I just recently promoted a guy to purple belt via Zoom, which I've never done before. I mean, he was going to have his promotion coming up, and it was a neat moment. I have to be honest, first time I've ever done it, and we'll have a formal thing when we get back together. But you're right, it can still be done. And something you had mentioned, and I've talked to a lot of martial art owners about this, is you actually now have to work twice as hard as you did in order to come through this whole thing.
Right. Again, you just have to make sure that people don't really care how much you know. That's the biggest thing. We always try and flaunt, hey, I'm a jiu-jitsu black belt. Hey, I've done martial arts for 36 years. I've done this. No one cares. If this is what you're going through and you're still doing the one post a day and not really engaging, people are like, hey, this guy doesn't really care. But if you're constantly engaging, liking their post, commenting their post, having conversations, making the phone calls, driving to their house, like, when is the last time any school owner has actually driven to someone's house to hand deliver them a belt or a stripe or a t-shirt or a uniform? It's not common. It doesn't happen. And so now seeing owners do that, they're like, wow, this guy really cares. He actually cares about me. And that's what matters. And so that's kind of why I think people that are doing that, they're thriving.
So what's the world going to look like when we get through this COVID thing? Do you think that memberships will go down? Do you think they'll increase? Do you think people will want to do it? How do you see the future?
I see it. It's different. I think if people are innovative and they continue to innovate, you're going to see a lot of new businesses grow from this particular experience.
Mm-hmm.
Think about this. If every martial arts school added a virtual training option, let's say you had 10 students a year move, you can retain those 10 students because they can now transition over to your virtual training.
Mm-hmm.
You can gain new members. You can have 5,000 members in your school now because you have people in Arkansas, Idaho, Canada, France, wherever, because they're a part of your online training. So you're essentially the Gracie Academy. You're online, but you're doing things very similar. So they were ahead of their time with the whole, here's the class options, here's the belt. So what I see happening, I think jiu-jitsu's taking the biggest hit. I think jiu-jitsu is going to get hit the hardest because you can't go back to what jiu-jitsu is soon. If we're reopening the countries in a matter of weeks or even a month, you're not going to be able to do jiu-jitsu the way that it was. You're going to have to wear a mask. You're going to have the social distancing. Everything is going to be the exact same as it is if you're doing online classes. You have to have solo drills. No one's going to do live rolling for at least 6 months, in my opinion, unless there's a vaccine that comes out. I personally think that taekwondo, karate, anything that's an individual's art, that's fine, because you could get back in the class, have your six feet rules, put masks on, everyone can punch and kick the air, and you're good. Jiu-jitsu, you can't do that. You can have people kind of have their little spots and quadrants in the room, and they can kind of hip escape and work the upas and work their positioning. You can't roll. You can't work submissions with the partner. You can't work chokes. You can't work escapes because that requires someone to be on you the whole time. And so I think jiu-jitsu's taking the biggest hit. I think you're going to see a skyrocket sales surge of jiu-jitsu dummies where people are going to just create their own, because now you can actually drill with someone. So if you're smart and I have a company that can manufacture jiu-jitsu dummies, I'm doing crazy sales. I'm doing COVID-19 specials. I'll do them for 19% off. I'll do something crazy because you're going to sell thousands of those things because you can't roll with a partner. So I personally foresee martial arts schools opening, I'd say around June would be a safe time frame that you would start seeing that happen. I think some things will open a little bit earlier, but jiu-jitsu schools, I don't think you'll see live rolling until mid-fall, just because I would assume that's when you'd start having more access to testing, more access to vaccines and things of that nature. But you're not going to get an actual jiu-jitsu class to happen now the way that it was 3 months ago. And so that's kind of the sad part. I know someone said in South Korea that they're actually having jiu-jitsu classes, but you have to wear masks. You can't roll with anybody. You have to have your own little spot and do your solo drills. And so I've always been the person, like, if you're going to do that, why not just keep doing the online classes? There's no purpose and point to put everybody back into a building, because if someone's asymptomatic, you don't know what's going to happen. What happens if a parent's watching a class and they cough? Now your entire school is infected. And then from that point, if someone gets infected at your school, then what happens? You're going to get sued if they find out that it happened inside your building and you knew about it. I heard about a school that actually had members that were positive with COVID-19, and they were still training and still running classes and still having private open mats and all kind of stuff. And I'm like, that is not smart. But people are so quick now that they want to get back on the mats. I've seen so many people say, hey, there's a gym clause that gyms are going to be able to reopen by May 4th, and we need to open up our doors. Right. That's the worst decision possible, because it doesn't say martial arts gym. It says martial arts school. Jiu-jitsu gyms are not gyms. They're jiu-jitsu academies. So if you were to put a gym and a school in the same category, it doesn't make sense. If all schools are closed and organized youth activities are closed, why are you reopening martial arts schools? Right. Doesn't make sense. And so I personally think within a month or two, you'll see organized like taekwondo, karate, individual arts. Those would be fine to go with proper social distancing and masks. And then I would say 3 to 6 months, you'll probably start seeing jiu-jitsu kind of get a little bit more lenient on things. But I think there's still going to be a lot of unknowns. I say you've got a solid year. So things will kind of get quote unquote back to normal. But that's just kind of what I personally foresee happening.
Of all the people I've talked to, you have the longest time frame of anyone I've talked to yet. So, I mean, and no one can know, right? I mean, that's the thing. It's all a guessing game.
Yeah.
But your perspective is very interesting. And something also is happening, which is weird. The whole COVID thing, I'll use the movies as an example. I heard that the drive-ins may make a comeback. Yep. They're virtually dead. You don't see drive-in theaters anywhere. And now it's like, well, that kind of makes sense. So I'm wondering if you'll see a resurgence of people who are going to traditional martial arts, more karate, more taekwondo, more individual kata stuff now,
right?
Because it has some of the distance stuff. Obviously, there's sparring, I get it and stuff, but
sure.
I don't know. I mean, it'd be interesting.
I've seen that too. I mean, I saw a huge post online where I think it was Texas or somewhere where they had drive-in churches. Like, I've never heard that in my entire life, but they drive up and they have church service outside and you're in your car. Genius concept. Again, people that are innovating now are going to be the ones surviving and are going to have new business after this. That's why the whole virtual thing, it's a genius move. No one was thinking of it before. Outside of races, you had a couple guys, but even the guys that have the online training courses, the Galvos, the Mendez brothers, it's not necessarily like a class. You're just saying, cool, he's showing this technique. I pay X amount of dollars a month and I see a technique. Now you're teaching a class and I get to be a part of that class. You can't put a price on that.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Gracies. I mean, years ago when they were innovators and they did the whole online thing, and it was a shitstorm, a
Mm-hmm.
firestorm of comments of like, this is useless, you can't do it. And
All right.
now
Everyone's doing it.
everyone's doing it, and so who's got the last laugh, right?
Right.
And there's obviously been modifications over the years on how people are doing it, but it's part of our culture now. We're at the
Right.
21st century, and it has to be part of it. And I think you're touching on that right now.
Yeah, for sure. You know, we did for our kids, we did what's called we did tip tests and we did skill assessment. So what happens with taekwondo versus jiu-jitsu? Within taekwondo karate, I can say, hey, show me this punch, kick, block, kata, your belt. You can't do that in jiu-jitsu and say, hey, show me hip escape, side control escape, arm bar, and you have to do it with the partner and see it during live rolling, and there's so many different things. And so what we did was we skill assessments, and so, hey, let me see you do all of these particular things, so now we know exactly where you are and how much closer you are on stripe, and how all those things work. And so we did skills stripes, tip test, and we did belt testing for our taekwondo kids, and it was a huge hit. We're constantly getting people posting videos. We did a really cool toilet paper challenge just to kind of get everybody engaged. And so you got kids and doing forward rolls, holding a roll of toilet paper, doing your combat base to stand up, holding toilet paper, and just make it more challenging where you hold it on your hand or you put on the your hand and make a fist, and you have to balance that. Because if you think about a combat base, most everybody kind of screws it up when they stand up, their head falls and their balance is off. And if you have toilet paper, and so you've just added all these different elements just to make it fun and engaging. And now you have different challenges, and parents are loving it, kids are loving it, adults are just having fun. They're posting training videos just wherever, because now they're still doing what they enjoy. And it's very similar to the last jiu-jitsu dummy now. You're just not getting someone choking you back,
Right.
essentially. So because we had a other day, said, hey, I'm not into the whole, on thing. I want to have a real life partner. I'm like, hey, if you just make a jiu-jitsu dummy, it's the exact same concept as you would have if you were in class. You're learning how to do a collar choke from mount. They're laying there. Is it, well, there's no resistance, and that's no resistance in class. If you're drilling that with, if you're in mount and they're on their back, you're just working your. They're not going to try and fight you right then. So you're getting learning how to do it. And so I kind of clicked with him, and now he's a huge fan of online training. So
Awesome. Now, I want to chat to you about Taekwondo and Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. And, I'm going to say complete opposites in many ways.
Yep.
And you have a background in both. So the first thing is you were a Taekwondo practitioner and teacher before you got into BJJ. What was it like to transfer from Taekwondo to BJJ? What were your first experiences like, and what was the conversation that was going on in your mind?
Sure. So I started Taekwondo in 1986. 86. A super long time ago. Then there was no pad. It was just a straight, like, it was a fight. So when you would spar and you'd have tournaments and fights, it was legitimately a fight. You weren't punched into the face, but I would say it's the closest thing to pancration as you could get outside of that, because you were kicking and punching, and it was crazy. And so I've done that for 34 years now, 30 through 34 years now. And in 1990, 98, somewhere in that time frame, we started UFC tapes, and we're like, man, here's because I want to say a guy versus a really big slow guy. We're like, yeah, it's gonna kick him, blah blah. He beat the hell out of the guy, and then he had a fight. That guy fought Hoist. I'm like, this guy's just laying on him. What's going on? Why is he there? And he dominates this Taekwondo guy. And I'm like, man, this is cool. Watch Tank Abbott take guys down and take their ankles home. And I'm like, this is really cool. How can we learn this? And so we would literally teach class, have our Taekwondo classes, and afterwards you would just kind of grapple nogi, and then start to just do that. And my first official Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu class was in 2005,
Mm-hmm.
4 5. A buddy of mine who has a school down the street, he introduced me to a local black belt that was he's kind of the guy in Washington. And I was, this is really, really cool. I need to learn this. And so I was really getting even deeper. So prior to that, it was always just, kind of no-gi, wrestle buddies, and just do what you saw on UFC tape from there. Um, when I first took that first jiu-jitsu class, and this is epic. I need this because taekwondo, it was fun, but jiu-jitsu, I wasn't punching, I wasn't getting kicked, I wasn't clashing, legs, I wasn't hitting elbows. I've had so many fights where I've literally shattered my instep, or I've popped from kicks, or I've hurt and broken. So from my knees down, I am shattered.
Yeah.
Torn ACLs, everything's broken. And so I saw that and I said, man, I got to learn this. And so we opened up our school in 2006, and I'm like, we need to have we need jujitsu here at the school. We talked to James Foster, super, super awesome black belt, and wanted to kind of work things out there. But again, I was young and didn't really understand business and didn't know what we were supposed to do. So we didn't really make that happen, unfortunately. But about a year or so later, kind of a jiu-jitsu coach fell into our lap. It was a father and son team from Brazil. And they just kind of fell in there magically, and we were training with them for many, many years. Got my blue belt and purple both from them, and I just learned that jiu-jitsu it's easier, but it's harder. And so I wasn't trying to memorize forms. I wasn't having to have weapons. I wasn't having to try and do these crazy flipping, spinning, twisting kicks, because you're never going to do that in a fight. I've had plenty of fights in my day, and I've always tried to finish them with one kick. If I can hit you one time in the throat or the ribs, good, fight's done. But if that fight goes to the ground, I would have been in trouble. Now I'm like, please, let's go to the ground. I don't want to stay standing with you. I'd rather just fall down and play there. And so I personally love it. I think it's the best blend, because every fight will start standing. So you have to have some sort of standing skill set. And then if they catch your leg, which most fights will, if you're a kicker, they know that, and they're going to try and catch your leg and take you to the ground. You fall right into my guard. So best case for me, worst case for you. And so if I can hit you and you eat that kick and I fall to my guard, game over. And so I always try and tell parents when they sign up now, especially for kids, bowling is going to start standing, but most likely it's going to go to the ground. So take both classes, because then you're getting the best of both worlds, and it's kind of your yin and your yang. And so it's been nothing but amazing. Short of a lot of injuries, but still, still amazing. Not, I wouldn't say it's not even as bad as the taekwondo injuries. I've had tons of ankle pops and stuff that way, and dislocated elbows and stuff, but nothing nearly as bad as the fights I had in taekwondo. Getting broken rib cages and getting completely knocked out, and broken noses and jaws, and that doesn't happen in jiu-jitsu. You might get choked out, you might hyperextend the elbow or tear something, but just the overall day-to-day, it's so much better.
So how do you sell Taekwondo when you just went on to say, I'm destroyed from all this high impact stuff? How do you sell it? And
it's different. Taekwondo is different now than it was when I came up. So when I came up in Taekwondo, there was no padding. You didn't have any of the protective gear. I grew up in Korea, and so that was where Taekwondo is from. The level of abuse that you would take in Korea compared to here, you couldn't get away with it. If you were late to class, you got hit with a stick. If you sat wrong, you got hit. So you were never late. You were literally a robot. We would kick trees just to make our feet harder. We would run in the snow. I mean, everything that you couldn't do. You could never take a kid outside and say, cool, kick that tree and break the tree. Your foot's going to break. I don't care, break the tree. I've had hundreds of those situations. I think I was 7 or 8, and I had a fight, and my finger broke. So my finger went this way, so it made it like a 7. My coach went, finish your fight. You couldn't do that now. And I've got a bone protruding out of my hand. He just kind of reset and said, you have to go finish. And I'm sitting there crying, blood pouring out of my hand, and you have to finish. You couldn't do that now. So the level of the level of intensity is different now than it was then. But the way we sell it is, it's not the fighting aspect isn't for everybody. There's different schools of thought, just like jiu-jitsu. You have your traditional jiu-jitsu, you have your sport jiu-jitsu. So if you were to take Keenan Cornelius jiu-jitsu versus Royce Gracie jiu-jitsu, they're both Brazilian jiu-jitsu. One's going to focus more on a self-defense aspect. One's going to focus more on sport, barambolos, and different things. They're both great, but they will each cater to a different person. The more athletic person would love to do all the competitive stuff. Well, the more shy and timid kid might like the self-defense aspect. And so that's kind of how we package Taekwondo, is just that, hey, I'm not running it the way that I did it. I've enhanced it. So I've always been the person that's went against the grain. I don't do things normally. I always challenge the status quo. So when all the Taekwondo guys are saying you have to only do Taekwondo, I was like, screw you guys. I'm going to throw punches, elbows. We're going to use knees. We're going to learn how to kick, close the distance, grapple, take them down. And Taekwondo guys like, well, you can't do that. I'm like, I don't care. Are you going to take my black belt away from me? You're not going to do that. So it doesn't matter. I want to give my students the best experience possible. And so that's kind of how we sell it, is just, we sell the self-defense aspect. We really focus on the life skill portion of it. How does it build your kids' confidence? How does it help them have more self-respect, and just kind of build that? If they want to fight and compete, cool, we'll do it. If you don't want to do it, hey, we're not going to force you. And so that's kind of how it's worked out. And we've got a ton of kids that do both programs. And we can easily say, hey, if you're not liking jiu-jitsu, just go check out Taekwondo, or vice versa. And worked great.
Tell me one of the biggest misconceptions that you think BJJ players have about Taekwondo.
I'd probably say they would think it's a belt factory. Because, again, like I said earlier, if let's say you're my student, I can say, cool, all right, show me let me see, these 3 blocks, these 2 kicks, show me your form. Cool, you get your next belt. That's how most traditional Taekwondo and karate schools work. Whereas jiu-jitsu, that doesn't exist. You can't really say, show me an armbar and this and this. You have to actually perform it and do it in a live aspect. And so I would say they would look at it as soft. They would look at it as a belt factory for those 2 reasons. But then I always say, hey, if you're thinking of that, every jiu-jitsu player always says Joe Rogan is a badass, Joe Rogan is this, Joe Rogan is that. He's a Taekwondo guy. We kind of came up, I think he was a year or 2 ahead of me. He was an age bracket or 2 ahead of me in the fight scene and when he was competing. And so I was at the similar tournaments that he was at, and seeing what he could do Taekwondo-wise. Now he's teaching GSP how to throw a back kick. If you have all these big prominent name fighters utilizing Joe Rogan's Taekwondo skills, it's not a bad art. I think it's great for both. So if he gets a pass with jiu-jitsu community, I think Taekwondo guys should get a pass too.
Interesting how that happens when someone famous ends up endorsing something, and then the rest of the community ends up following that,
right? Where
before it was like it was taboo and it could never happen. And it's always been there. And I think that's what you're pointing out, which is hilarious to me. So again, you're a Taekwondo guy, you're a BJJ guy. You also do other things, and this is kind of how our relationship started way back when. So I want you to actually just tell me about the other entrepreneurial stuff that you do.
Sure. Back in 2008, I first ran into your submissions 101 gis. I'm like, that's really cool. And there wasn't a whole lot of gis on the market. There was just, you had a couple that were the staples, that were the old school ones that just kind of stood the test of time. And there was a couple up and comers that were out there. I was working and talking with Pete from Origin way back in the day when he had 80 followers on Facebook. And we still laugh about this today. And I was like, we could do this and this and this. And I always pitch ideas to all these different gi companies. And everybody always gave me this, that sounds good, we'll get to it later. And I was like, the industry needs this. Let's do something. Let's stop sitting on it. So I was like, screw it. I'm going to start my own. And I've always been that way. back in school, someone had more skills than me and they were doing it for me, I would say, I'm going to learn it. I'm going to do it better. Everything. And so 2007, 2008, I started our gi company, Cynergi. And we launched, I would say, I think you were the first ones to do it with the Submissions 101 gi. We did a gray gi for the entire industry, essentially. And that gi sold out in like 45 minutes. Couldn't keep it in stock. And then we had to do a re-up on it, and that sold out in an hour and a half. And so I was like, man, people want this. And I always wanted to go against the grain because the traditional gi was white, blue, black. Those are your traditional. I'm like, let's do a gray gi. Gray sounds really cool. And then the first two is a gray and purple and a white and purple. Those are our husky colors from Seattle. And then we kind of did that. And then everybody and their mom did a gray gi. I think after that was 93 brand did a goose one, and everybody did this gray gi. And I'm like, well, this sucked. What's the next innovation that we could do? So we then went to a ripstop gi, because there was a company called Kwon Kimonos, and they were the only ones doing ripstop. And I was like, hey, I'd love to work with you guys. I do this and you guys do that. Maybe we can kind of partner and team up. And I always got pushbacks and no's. And I was like, well, fine. If you guys do it, I can do it too. I mean, this is nothing bad about anybody, no beef. It was just, I was like, cool. If you're not going to let me in, I'll do it myself. And so I launched a ripstop gi. And it was literally less than an ounce. It was the lightest ripstop gi on the market at the time. Again, we did a gray one. We did a gray one, a black one, and a white one. Same thing. And that one launched on BJJ headquarters. That sold out in minutes. We just couldn't keep it in stock. And then that one was just going so well. And then we kept innovating and adding different things. And then everyone else started making ripstop gis. And I was like, well, hell, stop copying me. And then we made a gold weave. And this one was like a bathrobe. It was the most comfortable gi ever. We did that. Same thing, gray. We did all colors, and people started making gold weaves. I'm like, dude, stop copying what I'm making. And there's a big name company that I can't mention, but they literally took my entire design and copied it to a T, because we had the same manufacturer and it was identical. They just changed my logo to theirs. And I'm like, well, you can do that because you can sell 100,000 gis in a weekend. You can do that. That's not hard. And so I was just getting frustrated. And then at that particular point, our manufacturer started making their own gis. And that's when you got burned by them with the Submissions 101 gi.
Yeah.
And so I was like, you know what? I'm not going to make any gis anymore. I'm going to just take some time off and just stop. And then a couple years ago, I was like, hey, let's kind of get back into it. Let's kind of see what the market looks like. And so we did a very, very soft launch of a gi internally. It was an OD green gi, but we did stuff that nobody was doing. Took stuff from the shoe industry, from different types of logos and different materials and just different stuff that way. And it just hit a home run. And I still have a gi in the works with another gi company. We're going to do like this partnership launch of one particular gi, and the material of it, no one's ever seen it. It's literally something that you would see in the shoe industry. And if it happens, it's going to be great. But we just kind of took a step back as everybody was copying. We launched the first Seahawks gi back in 2012 when they won the actual Super Bowl. And then a couple years later, Control goes out and drops their 12 gi. And I'm like, we made that first. We launched, I think it was 2013 or 14, we launched the first pearl weave belt ever on the market. And then everybody and their mom started making pearl weave belts and saying they were the first. And I was like, no, we did it first. And so it's always hard to see other people take credit for your work. And so we just kind of took a step back and didn't really do much. We did a Rainier Arms gi. I'm a huge gun fanatic, and we teamed up with them and did a really cool gi. We were going to do your gi for a little bit. We had some other ones in the pipeline, but this all happened, and just the gi side of things just kind of took a step back, just because, in my opinion, the industry is super oversaturated. There's 1,000 different gi companies. And so anybody and their mom can just make their own gis now. And so it's just like, to be innovative you can do it, but everyone's going to copy you. So it's pretty much first to market who has the biggest budget for marketing. And so it didn't really make sense to do that. And so we have the gi company, or had the gi company. I also run a graphic web design agency. And so we do websites for martial arts schools, for just businesses in general. We do videography with ads, and you name it, we do all of that. And so those are kind of my big things: the martial arts, my graphics and web design, and then again I had the clothing thing too. And so those are kind of my three big things that I've done, and still I'm kind of doing.
What's your web design company? How can people look that one up?
It's called cynermedia.com. It's pretty much my first name spelled backwards. So I was like, how can I be innovative? I was like, well, what's my name spelled backwards? Cool, I'll just do that. And so Cire, CIRE media.com. And so I've done that, and I work with a lot of martial arts school owners and try and show them, hey, if your website is essentially a second employee, where you can be sleeping at 1 o'clock in the morning, you should be able to get new students and members consistently signing up and get you paid. Whereas most of these school owners are like, hey, I have to pay the software company, I have to get the upgrade to get the website, and then the website looks like trash and it's not working for me, so I have to find someone else. Too complicated. So we use a company called Spark. I recently saw your I think it was MindBody that kind of screwed you guys over.
It was Zen Planner.
Zen Planner.
Yeah.
And we used Spark since it was created. The owner that has always been creating incredible work. And in my opinion, Spark is essentially the can't think. There's a really big software tool in the business world. I just can't top my head, but Spark is everything that you could ever imagine times 100. It's incredible, from web page creation to member management to apps to you name it. It's the works. And so I worked with them for years, and I still work with them. I swear by them. I say, if anyone has a martial arts school, you should leave whatever you have going with any other company and sign up with Spark, because it will change your entire world and revolutionize your school.
And it's funny you say that. So, I mean, a lot of people watching this don't own schools and things like that. But for the ones that do, we are slaves to software, because that's how we run them. And there are a ton of different software companies. I've done a few over the years, and they've never been awesome. It's almost like they have no idea how the martial art industry works, and their back end sucks, and their front end sucks too, and it's not intuitive. And so you told me about Spark. I'm going to look into that. But, we spent a lot of money on the software stuff.
Right. The cool thing with Spark, it's built by martial artists for martial artists. So like some tech guy that's like, hey, I can code and I can develop something, and let me make $1 million off of these martial arts. Don't know anything. They can just kick and punch and they fight for a living. Let me just their money. This is people just like you and I that have run martial arts schools, that have 5, 6 students and make insane money, that have taken time to let's build an incredible software. And that's what this is. It's literally the infusion soft martial arts. It's everything you can imagine times 100, because again, you can't catch up to what this is doing. And I can't say good things about them.
Cool.
So.
And you started off the podcast with, you mentioned a word, you said innovate, and you kind of ended off with innovate. And that's something that you've been doing for a long time. And innovation also gets you in shit, because people take your ideas, people don't give you credit, people think that you're going against the grain, that you're not traditional, that you're not progressive enough. You can never please everyone. And I think that's kind of why you and I ended up becoming friends, because we were both suffering, quote unquote, the innovation bug and things we were doing. And, when I made my first rash guard in 2006, there were no rash guards on the market. And I literally had to go to a manufacturer who screwed me over back then too. And they were surf rash guards. They didn't have the rash guards that we know today. Sublimation didn't exist, So my very first rash guard was just that heat press stuff. And I always tell the story because I think it's hilarious. And my students are rolling, and then class stops, and I look on the mat. I'm like, what's all this little white bits everywhere? And I realize all their rash guards had basically burned off because they're on the guard on their back. And I'm like, oh my God. So it's funny how far we've come, right?
It's crazy. The biggest thing when you innovate, you just have to do your heart says. I'm a person that I always reach out to students. I always want to check on people. I always want to make sure, there's that connection, whether it's what business it may be. I've had people tell me, hey, you should do that because people feel off. You shouldn't do this. You shouldn't do that. And I don't care. I don't care what everybody else does. I want to do what I know is best, because if it's good for me, if it works for me, then I'm giving you 100%. If I'm going to follow what the trend is, I'm not, 100% in on that. So that's where you and I are the same, um, look at submissions 101. Nobody's really doing that, and then you created an entire a way of life. I mean, hundreds of thousands of black belts that most likely at some point have watched and studied submissions one videos, probably even retaught the classes. I mean, it's been a staple of history, and there's been positive, there's been negatives about it. People would always try and give you slack and say this and that, but that's your passion, that's your heart, and you have to follow what you do. That's how you're going to move forward. You can't follow trends and do that. That's why being innovative is it's like the martial arts, where it's just you. You have to innovate, and it's a team sport. It's an individual thing, and so I think we connect.
So I want to end off our little talk today with two things. And the first one is I actually want to talk about police officers and the importance of jiu-jitsu and your perspective on that, obviously being a martial artist for over 3 decades. So give me your spiel on why you think it should be done, why not, or the benefit.
100%. I think jiu-jitsu is absolutely essential for law enforcement. I think law enforcement, military, anyone in that kind of space, it should be a requirement. It shouldn't just be something that is a suggestion. A requirement in training. If you look at any altercation enforcement to someone they're trying to detain, it goes from and that distance gets smaller and smaller and smaller. You have to put cuffs on them, and the minute you grab someone's hand and cuff, they're not just going to give you their hands nicely. It turns into a fight, and most of the time, it might not always be a fist fight. It most likely will, because you can subdue them, control them. And it's imperative that that whether you're small, I partner that we used to always do law enforcement seminars at our school for years. We did, I think, about 7 or 8 of them, and there's a blast to do, because you get to engage and connect with law enforcement, and you can see where some of them have really good strengths, but then some of them aren't very skilled. I would be afraid if didn't have that skill set, try to detain someone that was attacking my family member, And so I think it's important that everybody know how to do it, even just the basics, just to get someone on the ground, just to control from the top, and have an actual, almost military. The military has army combatives. If you created that entire system for law enforcement that was specifically jiu-jitsu centered and focused, I think you'd see a lot better results. You wouldn't see these YouTube videos of people getting owned essentially by criminals and just throwing these cops around. I think it's important that it should be a staple in training. It shouldn't just be an academy thing, and it should be something that's consistent. You should have weekly classes at the headquarters, and it should be something that's consistent across the board.
Yeah, and it's too bad, because we were going to Invictus was going to be down in Washington State just a few days ago, and we had to postpone it. So we're going to do it again, and hopefully we'll be in your neck of the woods, and actually look forward to seeing you when I come down there.
For sure.
How can people get a hold of you and stuff?
Facebook's great. The website, cynermedia.com, that's another big one. Facebook, you can just search for me, Eric Shields. I'm on there. I post on the page all the time. Our school is Champions Martial Arts Center. That's we're out anywhere that you look: Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. We're all over the place, so it's not hard to find us.
Cool. Anything you want to leave our viewers off with?
Hey, just thank you for the opportunity. It's great to see a friendship as long as ours has. It's been time. It's been over a decade, I'd say, And I definitely want to tell you that I hope that we could, back in the day when we did the Northwest Jiu Jitsu Summit in up there with you,
Yeah.
I'd love to do a part 2 of it. Maybe bring it down this way, or even do another one up there. I think when kind of cools off and gets better, we can talk about that, because that would be a super fun experience. Just that weekend alone was one I'll never forget, and would love to do more of it, make it my annual thing,
Yeah, that was super fun. So,
So,
Eric, I really appreciate it. Thanks for sitting down with me today on the Invictus Podcast, man.
for having me.
Okay, take care.
You too.